The President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, triggers emotional responses in everyone just because he is Trump. For this next video, I would ask that you set your feelings aside, block them out, so that we can look at Trump's statements about Lawrence objectively. I'm William Green, and welcome to the Free State. Whether you support the president or cannot wait to vote him out, he did not misrepresent Lawrence or the facts in his statements in Manchester, New Hampshire last week. What was truly incorrect about Trump's statements? Nothing that he said was personally insulting to anyone living in Lawrence. He singled out no individual. He stated facts. He stated that Lawrence was a primary source of fentanyl. He also stated that sanctuary cities like Lawrence are safe havens for just some really terrible people. The first fact is that Lawrence is an urban community with all of the problems that plague the inner city. It is a well-known and well-established fact that Lawrence is a primary source of drugs. And this is well known in the law enforcement community on both sides of the border. Every time someone is arrested, they're required to give personal information, such as their address. Law enforcement and police departments are then able to analyze where the source of the problem is coming from. There's clearly a problem, and they're making drug arrests, heroin and fentanyl arrests. And the suspects, the people that are arrested selling those drugs, have addresses. And if there is a pattern, or they observe a pattern developing, that many of the people that are arrested in New Hampshire have Lawrence zip codes, then it is reasonable to conclude that Lawrence is a primary source of drugs. Dartmouth College, it is an Ivy League college that would not compromise its reputation and its standing in the academic community. There is no question that the researchers at Dartmouth looked at the data objectively. The very first step that needs to happen, I believe the president is correct here when he identifies law enforcement options as being the front line and the very first step that needs to be taken in waging this war. I don't necessarily agree with the death penalty. I don't necessarily agree with longer prison sentences. I would like to see a new approach to ferreting out drug dealers. I understand the supply and demand aspect here. I truly do. If there were no addicts, there would be no dealers. If there were no dealers, there would be no addicts. But we're here now. We're here. What we need to do is find a way to support those in treatment and in recovery. And if we continue to negligently allow a flood of heroin and fentanyl into our streets, then we are failing those that are truly trying to seek treatment and recovery. The absurdity is, it's that much easier to find a bag of dope than it is to find someone willing to help you when you and your addiction have hit rock bottom. I believe that drug dealers and addiction are a part of American culture and will be for some time. The goal, in my opinion, should be to target, again, to target the drug dealer so that fewer new addicts are created. So it is that much harder to sustain and maintain an addiction. We are in the business of saving lives. I want to prevent this slow suicide that our heroin addiction is from ever beginning. And the only way to do that is to prevent new addicts from being created. There will be less death. The only way to achieve the results we're looking for, saved lives, is through disciplined and vigilant policing. Law enforcement here is the solution for saving lives. The president stated that Lawrence is a sanctuary city. The mayor states that we are not a sanctuary city. Who is correct? The word or the term sanctuary city, it isn't a designation or a classification officially of any city. It's a term that's used to acknowledge the existence of certain conditions, certain legislation that is in defiance of the federal government, that seeks to at least give the appearance of preventing local law enforcement from cooperating with immigration. If that's the standard, then Lawrence, through its trust ordinance, is a sanctuary city. Read the documents on this page: the Lawrence Trust Ordinance, Massachusetts Senate Bill S. 1305, and the lawsuit against President Trump brought by Mayor Dan Rivera and the city of Chelsea. One of the unique things about sanctuary cities is they have large populations of people who through language are cut off from American culture. When that condition exists, there is room for much misinterpretation of the facts. Information gets lost literally in translation. Factor in the presence of COSECHA and similar organizations building networks to harbor undocumented persons, and you have the perfect condition for the narco-immigrant. Narco-immigration is something that we have in Lawrence, where immigrants come to Lawrence, come to the United States, and end up in Lawrence with the sole purpose of violating American law and destroying American lives. The narco-immigrant comes to Lawrence, comes to the United States with one purpose: to profit by slowly murdering our children. The reality is, not all immigrants that are without documentation are criminals. But if 10% of the estimated 210,000 undocumented persons living in Massachusetts are criminal, that means there are 21,000 potential criminals, potential narco-immigrants in the Commonwealth. And they're not hard to find. They're in sanctuary cities like Lawrence and others. I would presume that Chelsea's another one. They're joined with Mayor Rivera in the lawsuit against President Trump. And the question then, do any of these other similar urban immigrant communities have drug problems, drug-related crimes, dealing, addiction, if they do, I confidently state that it is because of the narco-immigrant. Lawrence needs to own its share of this problem. If you conduct a Google search for Lawrence drug busts, or Lawrence and heroin, or Lawrence and fentanyl, the first few pages are going to be full of results that indicate that there is drug dealing going on in Lawrence. This is a reality. Lawrence and her neighbors truly need to recognize the real threat of narco-immigration. Regardless of what you feel about President Trump and his statements, he spoke accurately. He spoke accurately. Lawrence is a sanctuary city and does have a problem with illegal narco-immigrants. "413 families lost loved ones to overdoses last year. How many of those victims bought their last bag in Lawrence? Even one confirmed sale is too much for me.